Well, good morning. I hope this isn't the first time that you've seen my face, my ugly mug. I'm Gary Carter, and I'm one of the perpetrators of the Breakthrough Pathways. We think we're onto something here. Breakthrough Pathways is a system where we identify what needs to happen with people, where we kind of sneak up on them and get them started into activities that we trust will become habits, many of them, not all of them necessarily, but they will become habits in their life that will develop them towards where they need to go. Now, what we're dealing with in this broadcast is this whole business of what we're supposed to be when we're fully mature. I think that one of the things that slows people down is that they say, well, I could never be that. That's, as you know, when people are presented with the option of Christianity, they say, I could never live up to those rules. And to which we say, no, wait a minute, the grace will apply, and God will give you the strength, and yada, 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 and all that true stuff. But once they come to Christ, then if we say, you have the potential to be a leader, they say, well, there we will. And I think that when we get people started in these habits of these pathways that we have developed for you, there's nothing special about them. Well, there's something very special about them, but what I mean is there's nothing unknown and special and secret about them. They're pathways you already know about, and most of them you've already walked on. This book was written, as I've explained before, in the 1870s, and has been seen as a classic in the development of discipleship. Honestly, I'm not as sure. It's the training of the 12 as describing the life of Christ, and they had to kind of pick up the training kind of by osmosis without it being directly taught to them other than the example of Jesus, but I digress. And today we're at the level, way up on the sixth rung of the ladder, where we're delving into, as we have been, things that relate to the subject of humility. Humility is critical in understanding how to walk with Jesus in the Christian life. And I think that by the time we're done today, this might take a poke at your own soul and have you think about, am I as humble as Jesus intended me to be? Well, the story that we're dealing with here is about Jesus and paying the temple tax. And only Matthew records this. He records it in Matthew chapter 17. And in that chapter, he describes this little incident that gives us a window into how Jesus behaved and therefore how he intended us to strive to behave in our lives. It was a story of two tax collectors coming up to Peter and saying, does your master pay the temple tax? That would indicate that not everybody did. Now, we have to understand that every male above the age of 20 was supposed to pay this tax every year. And the price was 2 drachmas. Hard to know exactly what that means, but it was a worker's wage for the day was equivalent to a drachma. So I think of that as $200. So we've got 2 drachmas. So this is a significant tax that is paid here, $400 each for Jesus and Peter. I don't know what the others did. The passage doesn't tell us anything about that. I wonder if Matthew, who was the previous tax collector, had an inside track and didn't have to pay. Just a crazy little aside, kind of the things that my distracted mind just runs to that squirrel. In any case, we learn that Jesus did pay the tax according to Peter, so that was the habit that Jesus had. Now, as soon as Peter got into the house, Jesus asked him a question. He said, what do you think, Simon? From who do the kings of the earth collect duty or taxes? From their own children or from the others? So the picture here is the king in the palace. And do his kids pay taxes? And it's, well, like, no, but everybody else has to pay the taxes. So that's what Jesus says. So if we understand that Jesus is the king of the ultimate kingdom, then he really isn't subject to tax, particularly this temple tax, because he called that temple his house. And it was his house. He certainly wouldn't have to pay taxes on it as a matter of keeping the rules that everybody else had to keep. So Jesus has an inherent exemption. You could take the time, I'm not going to drill down on this, but you think about that. He leaves the splendor of heaven. He comes here. He humbles himself as a man. He lives by human rules. And it's so important for us to understand that our rights and the rules don't always match up. We may have the right to not live by a particular rule, but if we're going to be like Jesus, we will live by those rules of the society, in this case of the religious society, to demonstrate that we are in tune and in sync with Jesus and walking with him and demonstrating the humility that he demonstrated. So we have in the story, and Jesus saying, Peter, I know we're impoverished here. You've left your fishing business and we don't have any money here. We just slick from hand to mouth. So I want you to pay the temple tax. I don't want to fight this. And Jesus was one who said, no, I don't want to fight it. You remember Peter wanted to take off. Well, he did take off the ear of the high priest's servant. He was one who wanted to fight to win the kingdom. And Jesus, no. His provision that Jesus made was for himself, interestingly, but also for Peter. And go and find his fish. Now, was this coin miraculously created in the mouth of the fish, or did it happen to have the coin in his mouth and come by? In any case, it is unusual, and we can certainly deem it as a miracle of the location or of the creation of the coin, and Peter demonstrated his obedience. What a crazy thing to do. Go catch a fish. The first fish you catch is going to have a 4 drachma coin in it. That's a little weird. So why would Jesus do that? Well, Jesus is saying that you've always got a choice. You can try and stand on principles, and you might, in a technical sense, be right. Or you can just obey the rule and live with it. You can make a scene and make an issue of it, or you can just let it go and live the way it is and take your stand by not taking a public stand. A little aside here, it seems to me that too many people are wrapped up believing that the politicians of the world or the other people in the world should that make things work right for the world and the way it ought to go when they press on things that come and go and standards that they think are really, really important to the government's going to take away all our rights. And lately they come and they go, stand for the gospel. I was listening earlier to the guy rant about how bad the government was in his particular location in the world. Buddy, get back to the book, get back to the gospel, demonstrate some humility. Maybe go and talk to that leader or one of their people and express your views. But by all means, you don't need to put out this. It was thousands of people in his church, and he was stirring them up to a political cause rather than keeping the main thing the main thing. We always have a choice. We can live by the rules and the standards that are established in our world, which are always going to be imperfect. Or we could say, I've got the divine right for this, that, or that thing because God says. And Jesus said, no, it's my temple, but no, let's pay the tax. And I think that demonstrates for us an attitude that we need to understand. So, what do we make of this? Well, it seems to me that, and maybe this is a stretch, and this is not Amy Bruce, this is me, but as I kind of marinated in this subject for a while, I thought we get stuck sometimes, particularly Christian leaders, with an expectation of the way life should be, particularly pastors, seminary leaders, and so on, of the role expectations. They get caught up with their own self-importance because somebody calls them doctor, this or that or the other thing. And they think that they have a special place on this planet because people treat them like they do. And they think that they're entitled to more pay than the other person or more privileges or whatever it is. And they don't demonstrate that Jesus paid the tax. It was no big deal to him. Even though he lived in poverty, he didn't have a regular income other than what people gave him and donated along the way. He paid the tax. He played by the rules that were out there. But often, it seems to me that people get a set of expectations of what things are going to be like when I'm the pastor, when I'm the boss. And I think it's very important for us to delve into that. So I'm going to give you a few tips here, some things to think about. You get these expectations of your role and you kind of get used to the routine and the office and the procedure when they say, good morning, doctor, da, da, da. And you walk in and you say, good morning, so nice to see you there. You kind of grasp for this leadership, you feed on it. It becomes a trait of your personality. I guess I really am important because those people treat me like I'm important. And it gives you the opportunity for power. And you say, oh, I suggest you do this or that. And they say, good idea. And they go and do it. Whether or not it's a good idea, they do it because you're in the power position. And, it all depends on which side of the paycheck is signed and what kind of power you have. And you don't realize that they're not responding to your ideas. They're responding to your position. They're responding to your status. Oh, well, must know better because you're the great king. And the difficulty that we run into so often is that there are people in our churches who say, well, we don't want to ruin the ministry. No, he's a little off base on this, but I don't want to make a scene. I don't want to do anything about it. And there needs to be self-regulation amongst the people who allege to be leading in the kingdom, to be like Jesus, to be humble, to pay the tax. Just get on with it. So what happens when you lose your role? And I watch this all the time with pastors. They get fired or they quit because of one reason or another. And they lose immediately their role. And that attacks their identity as to who they are. It shouldn't, but it does. And sometimes they deny and they say, well, I'm just between churches looking for a better opportunity. Good luck with that. It may work out, may not. They'll place the blame on the other people. Well, the chairman of the board, they might be in the back. And I can tell you for sure that when you start in a church, often the person who picks you up at the airport to bring you in and they kind of give you all this special treatment and you kind of believe it. That's probably the person that's going to put the knife in your back. And you can expect that it's not very far from that penthouse that they want you to describe you living into the outhouse. It's not very far. You'll go very quickly off of that pedestal when the time comes. So get over it. And sometimes when that happens, people don't expect it because they've now absorbed this attention that they get into their definition of themselves, and they get angry when it disappears. Nobody's listening to me anymore. Well, they really weren't listening to you before. They were listening to the role that you occupied, and you thought they were listening to your ideas. And they get angry, but sometimes they know, well, I'm not supposed to get angry, but so they bury their anger, and they withdraw, and they end up getting depressed, and sometimes it gets so bad that they choose, I'm entitled, some pleasure in life, and they get absorbed in immoral things that have a secondary place in their life, and they live a double life, and then they get exposed, and that's awful. And sometimes they even think about, there's no way out of here but to take my own life. Trust me, brother and sister. If there is another way out, you don't have to take your own life. Your identity is not wrapped up in your role. Don't believe that nonsense. If you did once, then change your mind and realize that was all just a bunch of baloney. And that's just the way it is. And it's not going to be that way now until perhaps the Lord restores you to a position where once again you understand that in that role that's full of baloney, you still had the opportunity to do some good things for the kingdom. And what happens often is that when one of those Christian leaders loses their role identity, they seek another supply to fill their ego, to fill them up. And that new supply could be in a new role, which might be a bigger role. But if they haven't dealt with themselves, they're road to a wreck. Before then, man, they need to be very, very careful to take heed lest they fall. They develop sometimes a way because, leaders are good with words to manipulate other people, to kind of suck up to them and say, oh, you're the personality. And we could do this together. We can make a big difference. And if you invested $1 million in the business that I'm kind of start, we can change the world of the ministry. And some people will buy that with their $1 million. And some people, in fact, can make a difference with that $1,000,000. Most of us can't. Um, you lose the role, and then you have a fantasy portrayal of well, I really am important. I'm the president of this or that or something. And people start on their head again a little bit. And you're saying, okay, this is working. So you've found a new supply to fill up what's lacking in your own identity, your own soul. Don't get into that stuff. Pay attention. Just realize, no, play by the real rules, even though you might think you're more important. And in some senses, you are. So what happens here? You lose the role, you start to withdraw, and you say, well, since they're not listening to me anymore, there's no point in me going to the meeting. Well, yeah, you wanted everybody else to go to the meeting to listen to you. Now, you don't want to go to the meeting to listen to the other guy. Isn't that interesting? So you withdraw. You form some barriers of isolation. And, maybe your spouse says, you need to get out of the house more. You say, oh, leave me alone. And I'm studying, and you really are deflecting, and you get more and more depressed and don't know where you fit in life. What's going to happen is others they'll look at you and say, oh, I'm fine. So such an upbeat person, and now I see they kind of down on the mouth. They reassess what you really like, and so your attitudes have become negative because of this embedded rage in your life as your loss of your position. Start to stick out in little sentences that you make, and you say, whoa, I was surprised. I thought so highly of him. Now, not so much. This loss of the role sometimes will destroy somebody, and they'll go find another role in life, and they'll go settle for something other than serving the King of Kings up there when they were young. They said they so desperately wanted to do. So what are you supposed to do if you lose your role? And most pastors, somewhere along the line, are going to get fired or have already been fired twice. And you're going to have to reinvent yourself in some way. Now, maybe the Lord will call you to another parallel position. I'm not disputing that. It's good. But when you reinvent yourself, you lose the role or you quit or whatever, you have to rethink what's going on really, truly, what you really are made of. And in your reinvention, you do not look for a supply replacement. I watched this. No, obviously, you want to do something to make an income, and I'm not disputing the need of that. But it's the new role that you have. You're going to become a counselor or a coach, which so many of us do, and waffles as well. But not as a supply replacement, because what I find out is that a fellow told me the other day that what happens, he's a psychotherapist, sounds really good. He's got a contract with a big institution, sounds pretty good. He's got to find his own clients. And his old clients can go month by month, week by week. Maybe they pay $150 an hour. Go along, and then in June they say, don't need you this summer. See, in September, his income goes right to nothing. And it can get very difficult when you are trying to do things on your own. Trust me, it isn't as automatic and as beautiful as it might look from the outside. There will be a lot of tough days in that new role as well. So don't look for something to supply a replacement for filling your ego that you lost when you lost your role. But you've got to find it, whatever it is. You've got to find this new sense of identity and purpose. And you've got to replace what was with something that's good. And I'm drawn to 1 Timothy 6:6, and you can read the whole passage there in 1 Timothy, where Paul says to Timothy, godliness with contentment is great gain. You've got to find a place of contentment. They're not going to listen to you whine and complain about how bad the other guy was and how the institution is all wrong and everything needs to be changed. If they only did it my way, everything would be fine. Nobody's going to listen to that nonsense. Even though you have some truth in there and you have some new awareness in there that you didn't have before, just recognize that you can help spread that awareness to other people and find it, whatever that it is that is there for you. Just play by the rules as they are. You may have certain rights, so you may not. Don't worry about those. Let those dissipate. Let those go away. They go away, and pay the debt. And then you will find that you can demonstrate more and more the humility, that Jesus wants you to demonstrate. The training of the 12 up there on the 6th rung of the ladder is that you're going to have to deal with the situation where you're not as important as you thought you were. And you're going to have to leave all of that and become a humble servant. And when you do, you will become those new generation of leaders that will help encourage others. I was talking to a pastor yesterday, and I was saying, we've got to do something different because 40% of pastors want to quit. He said, well, let me push back on that a bit through the year. I got to the place where I wanted to quit, and somebody came along and they gave me a bit of encouragement, so I kept going. I said, you're making my point that we need to be there for others. If we've had the difficult times ourselves, then we need to help others. I said to my friend, learned from someone else a long time ago, if you're walking through a minefield, follow someone or distance. And life is a minefield. If you've been through that minefield, or maybe you're in the middle of it and you feel like things are exploding all around you, you're still here. You're still here in this lesson. And you too can make a difference. Don't let yourself give in to the isolation and withdrawal. No, they won't come to you like they used to come and gather around you and kind of line up to shake your hand and ask you an important question. You'll be out by yourself. You're going to be the one who takes the initiative to go and start a conversation with someone. And maybe there's someone out there today that you can help. You can send them a text and say, I was thinking about you today. You could phone them. Not that. You can maybe sit down and write a thoughtful email if you like putting words onto a paper. Then those words on the screen, they can have a different kind of use in people's lives. Maybe you say that person, hey, let's do breakfast together. I always like to go for breakfast rather than lunch. First of all, it's cheaper, but also you get somebody at the best part of the day, the early part of the day. And you can interact with them. Do something to make a difference and demonstrate that you had the creative humility that Jesus designed for you.